This is Jared with Stampede Blue. This is your Indianapolis Colts post-game wrap, and the Colts won today at home against the Buffalo Bills. The final score was 37-5, and they won because they did everything correct. Today they ran the ball effectively, 37 rushes, 220 yards. Marlon Mack had 19 carries for 126 yards and a touchdown. Andrew Luck was incredibly efficient with the football. 17 of 23, 156 yards, 4 touchdowns, hit 8 different receivers. At one point completed 8 passes in a row against what was supposed to be a pretty good defense and an even more stout rush defense. The Colts absolutely put it all over Buffalo today at home. Now, we have to admit, the Bills worse without their starting quarterback, rookie Josh Allen, and really do not have a comparable backup. And I'll give it to Derek Anderson. 21 of 30, couple hundred yards, 3 interceptions, sacked twice, two ran sheared. But the bottom line here is it's the same thing I say every week. If you run the ball effectively, if you do not turn it over, and if you force turnovers and get points off your turnovers, you win football games. And the Colts did that. Darius Leonard had 17 tackles. Assuredly still leads the NFL in tackling. Mike Mitchell had a hell of a football game today. He was everywhere. And the Colts, although they didn't appear to generate too much of a pass rush, because Derek Anderson was definitely getting the ball out, and the Colts did well enough to limit the rushing attack that Buffalo provided. And Chris Ivory put a heck of an effort forward after LaShawn McCoy went down early in the first quarter with what I thought was an ankle injury. It appeared to be a head injury. Weird. And then the Colts' really only blunder came in the second half when you're up big and have no business doing so. It looked like initially Andrew Luck was to blame and that he just kind of missed on a what would be considered like a high hard snap, right? However, if we go back and watch the replay, it really kind of looked like no one was set and Andrew Luck didn't call for the snap. But we can debate that until the end of the world, and none of us will be right. They'll answer it for us in the locker room here shortly. The Colts are now 2-5. They play the Raiders next week in what is another winnable game. And the Colts showed today what a really mostly healthy football team from the Colts is going to look like. They spread the ball around. They run the ball effectively. Did anyone else notice that Marlon Mack's presence kind of raised the play of Jordan Wilkins and Nyheim Hines? Did anybody else notice that the Colts are starting to use T.Y. efficiently? Earlier in the season, I noticed Andrew Luck was heavily targeting T.Y. Hilton, and it was not converting. Today, he only had 4 targets, but he had 4 catches and 2 touchdowns and 2 first downs. On all 4 were really important plays. So it shows you that Andrew Luck trusts T.Y., and when he doesn't overutilize them, they're really efficient. And that's really what football is all about, right? Remember, the things that I care about as someone who's been around this game my whole life too, right, is time of possession. Did you run the ball effectively? Did you turn the ball over? Did you force turnovers? And did you score off your turnovers? And the Colts checked off all those boxes today and have to feel really good about the win. And again, we want to temper our excitement because it was the Bills who coming into the game were 2-4 and really aren't presenting much that can't be beaten at this point, and obviously Colts showed that today. But it is kind of a foundational win. This was Frank Reich's first win in Lucas Oil Stadium, and it just kind of goes to show you what this team is capable of when everything goes their way, when the ball bounces their way, when the calls go their way, right? So like today, for example, I don't really have very much of a gripe with the officiating. There was two calls, one call that was made, a defensive holding call, and then a pass interference call on Ebron that I felt was questionable. But even in this game, it felt like the Colts played beyond expectation, right? They ran the ball incredibly well. They were incredibly efficient on third down. They forced turnovers on defense. They did everything right. Moving forward, we'd like to see a little more consistent pass rush, but again, I feel like we're beating a dead horse there. Same thing could be said for the growth of the secondary, right? Got some interceptions today, that's all good and well, but felt like Kelvin Benjamin was wide open and caught whatever he wanted to catch, and even though some of his catches were contested, And there were some balls that he came down with that I think he was even surprised that he got. To me, that says that the secondary needs work and the guys shouldn't be that wide open. And I get it. The cover two is kind of predicated on giving up the underneath throw and tackling them and eliminating yards after catch. So again, here we are. Like I said, 2-5, and not in the most comfortable position. About approaching the halfway point anyway, right? But we got the Raiders next week. That's a totally winnable game. At that point, you're 3-5 going into your bye week, week 9, and then coming back. If the Colts are healthy, they have a chance to win a majority of the remainder of the games. I know a lot of people out there are going to say tank the season, try to get another high draft pick, and make Chris Ballard look really good. But I wanted to point out that several of my cohorts here at Stampede Blue and I are kind of reveling in Chris Ballard right now. The draft picks are kind of lining up, and if Tyquan Lewis comes back and he's any semblance of what Chris Ballard says he can be, this team looks real good from a foundational perspective, right? We're talking about guys like Quentin Nelson, and then we're talking about Braden Smith panning out. We're talking about Darius Leonard panning out, all the way, like I said, go back to Tyquan Lewis too. The team's really starting to come together, and I get it. In a victory, you're always saying this stuff. We were saying the same things in losses, right? Hey, we didn't win, but we showed some strides forward. And at this point, I have to admit, the Colts offensive line looks impeccable. That's 2 games in a row they didn't give up a sack. Now today you got a win, and a much-needed one, especially at home. So certainly happy with the win, and excited to see progress, right? To see the Colts put together a complete football game. And I'm really excited to see what happens in the future. You know, if Andrew Luck isn't throwing the ball 50 times a game, I like our shot, right? If we're running the ball, like Marlon Mack came in and ran the ball, and like I said, he elevated the play of the other running backs. Hines and Wilkins ran the ball really well too. So it kind of tells me that like competition breeds great play, and that's what we're kind of seeing out of the Colts today. So I'll leave you with that. That's all I've got for you this week. This is Jared with Stampede Blue. This has been your Indianapolis Colts post-game wrap. And we'll see you after next week's game. Go Colts.